Well, I'm going to kick us off, and just because it's a new season and we might have some new people here, I did make just a really quick little slideshow that I will share. But just before I do that, I assume everyone's pretty familiar with this platform, but just make sure that you're muted unless you're speaking, because you never know when background noise is going to pop up. It'll make the meeting kind of go smoother. And we'll try to stay on top of muting people too if someone's unaware that they are muted and having a funny side conversation that they don't want all of us to hear. So, okay, let me screen share. How is that? Can you guys see a big Homeworm Drawdown logo? Awesome. This logo was designed by Sarah Ferrari. She was one of our original steering committee members who has, unfortunately for us, but happy for her, left our community to go fly and work on other projects where she's from in Wyoming. But we really love it because it reflects our home, and yeah, reaching out our hands to one another to get something done. Homeworm Drawdown is a collective project that's really powered by all of you volunteers, but has received organizational support from Inlet Keeper and Kachemak Bay Conservation Society. And this is our kickoff of our kind of second season, if you will, of Homeworm Drawdown. We, well, actually, maybe before I kick us off in that direction, I will just say that I want to bring our awareness to maybe perhaps why we're all here, which is our shared love for this place that we're living in, Homeworm and Kachemak Bay. And I want to just pause to recognize that these lands that we live on are Indigenous. And as we gather as Homeworm Drawdown and recommit to our goal of collectively implementing and organizing projects that support climate stability and just a better relationship and more sustainable relationship with this place, I'd really like to offer recognition and respect and just a lot of gratitude to the Dena'ina and Supiaq people who have stewarded these lands for time immemorial. But to bring us back to our journey as Homeworm Drawdown, we started in March of 2019, the very first month of the pandemic, and we had one amazing meeting at the college in person where we kicked off this idea of collectively organizing climate solutions that will help stable our carbon cycle here locally. And we used one particular resource. You can see in the first photo here, this book, Drawdown. It's edited by Paul Hawken, and it presents solutions by sector like food, buildings, transportation, etc. And really with robust research that supports how much carbon would actually be reduced if we implemented these solutions. So we went through this book chapter by chapter, and we brought in experts from the local community to help us think about what these solutions could look like here. And then at each meeting, we brainstormed different projects we could do to implement a carbon reducing solution within the sector, within the chapter subject. And then we voted on ones we'd like to carry forward to consider further. And ultimately, through that process, of a long democratic process and well-researched process, we ended on implementing a land use solution where we organized a project that would protect our local peatlands and educate people about why peatlands are an incredibly important carbon sink. And we got people on the ground in these common and beautiful landscapes. And we did a lot of citizen science surveys, and people learned a lot more about the carbon cycle through this process. And the data that was collected will be used in a potential carbon offset program that the Research Reserve is working on. And we also partnered with organizations to just really amplify peatlands through different mediums through our community, particularly art, and had a really cool event with the Pratt and Benell demonstrating peat art. But this meeting isn't about the Peatland Project. The Peatland Project is going to carry on, and there'll be time for questions. And if folks have questions about the Peatland Project, we can spend a little bit of time on that. But really what we hope to talk about today is our next chapter, our new project. The goal of Homeworm Drawdown is to have sort of a flow of working on one project a year. And that's what we're kicking off now. So I want to bring us back to our, I can't even remember, it was after our 9-month process of researching solutions, we ended up with 10 top solutions. And you can see here, these are the 9 solutions that remain from our top solutions. And the steering committee, when we met to initiate this second phase of Homeworm Drawdown, decided to reduce these solutions to 5 initially, but we're going to have a process to bring more solutions to the table. So these were our top 9, and what we did to kind of consolidate and decide which solutions to reconsider and revisit initially was by looking at our voting process from our selection, and we eliminated solutions that only had 1 or 2 votes. We also eliminated solutions that did not feel feasible to accomplish within a year. So the solutions we eliminated are these 4. Wind farm feasibility study didn't feel accomplishable within a year. It's also currently being done through Homer Electric Association. The outdoor programs for girls only received 1 vote, and is also a niche that currently is being filled by programs like HAL. Homer area mini mass transit did not receive votes, and the salvage site only received 1 or 2 votes. But I will say that all of these projects that the steering committee has taken off the table for now could be brought back to the table, because we're going to be introducing because we're going to initiate a process where folks can propose new solutions, and they can be solutions that we've already talked about before. So the solutions that we are going to consider through this selection process are low-income home energy efficiency, food preservation co-op, non-motorized transportation, a community compost program, and a program to make heat pumps affordable. Now, those are the programs, those are the solutions that the steering committee has chosen, but we also wanted to create room for the collective to bring a few more solutions to the table. So I'm just going to briefly talk about how we're going to do that. This is sort of our calendar of events. So today we're going to talk about compost, heat pumps, and non-motorized transportation. And then at the end of today, we'll have some homework. And that homework will be to revisit the solutions that we learned and talked about through our first process. So you can pick up a Homeworm Drawdown book if you don't already have one. We have some copies here at Cook Inlet Keeper. You can go to the website, and you can look at the Cook Inlet Keeper website with our drawdown page, where we have archived all the solutions we previously considered, to kind of refresh and really get excited about a solution that maybe you've been thinking about for a long time. I know that most of the people here in this room have a lot of great ideas that just feel like they can't be implemented on their own. And a lot of them do have impact to the carbon cycle here. So what we're going to ask folks to do is just bring to the next meeting ideas that they would like to see Homeworm Drawdown work on. And those ideas will need to be grounded in how they impact climate change. And also, are they achievable in a year? Are they something that a lot of people that can have roles doing? Bjorn, I think we'll talk a little bit more about the homework overall, but stay tuned, we'll come back to that. And then in February, we'll look at our other 2 solutions that the steering committee chose, which is energy efficiency and our food storage co-op. And then folks can bring to the table the solutions that they thought about over the last month. And we'll vote on a few to look at in depth in our March meeting. So these are the 3 that are unknown right now. And I'm sorry, I know this feels convoluted. I hope that folks are following. We're going to have a moment to ask questions. And then, so we're going to spend 3 months really, really digging into solutions. Today, February, and in March. And then in April, we'll go through our process of selecting a solution. So we'll have a big meeting where we present our top solutions, and at the end of it, we'll have voted on the one we're going to carry forward into this year and this season of Homeworm Drawdown implement. All right, well, really all that I wanted to do before we launch into this meeting is give you time for questions, because I know that was a potentially a lot of information all at once. So if anybody has any questions about the process, anyone of our steering committee, who I'll just pause to introduce right now, can answer that. So I'm Satchel. I work for Quick Inlet Keeper as the lower inlet organizer, community organizer. And then we have Bjorn, who I'm sure that you know through Ketchikan Bay Conservation Society and Alaskans Know Climate Change. And then our volunteer steering committee members, Dale Banks, and this year, Jeannie Parker. Does anybody have any questions about the process, or like just, they don't have to be questions, they can be something maybe we're not considering that you want to throw out on the table?
Really a who's who, because Ed, Rika, you know, Beth Trowbridge, Aaron and Pig. I hope so.
Is that a question, or was that maybe a I wish I was muted moment?
Definitely wish that was muted.
Totally. Adele, I see your hand raised.
So then the solution is chosen in April, and the group works on the project through kind of December, and there's another process next January? Or will it be almost like a 2.0 will take until 20, whatever comes next, 24?
I think that it kind of depends on the project. Ideally, like it would be nice to wrap it up at the end of the year, just as everything's wrapping up. But I think that we are looking at projects that we hope can be implementable in a year. And if that's a 12-month cycle, that's a 12-month cycle. We'll just have to see how we hopefully won't have too sprawling of a project. Our goal at the end of April is to come away with a project that we have really clear objectives on, and we can just get rolling really fast and dive into it. So it's possible we'll be done by December, but I think that you know, typically these projects are designed to take a year, and it's okay if it rolls into the spring.
I think one caveat that I would add is that, you know, a year is a little bit arbitrary, but it's nice, you know, it like creates a good amount of time. We saw with the peatland project, you know, how much was achievable in that kind of, you know, 1 year time frame. But one of the things that we're, I think, attempting to do is to have a project that can see success rather than having a program that requires long-term, you know, funding and investment and, you know, this continued follow through, which is, you know, a little bit of a strange thing to try to figure out. But, you know, if we can have some project that we can then see through, you know, it doesn't matter if it's 12 months, 11 months, or 13 or 14, but it's like a boom, we're done. You know, that's kind of like the sort of the hope. At least that's how I think about it.
I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to the Kenai Drawdown solutions that they've gone through, because those have been a little more finite than our peatland project was.
Yeah, well, that's on our agenda. We have Caitlin in the room, but to talk about the Soldotna project a little bit. But I think first we were going to just kind of recenter ourselves in the like successes and challenges of the peatland project and the lessons that we've learned in thinking about this upcoming project. So not like the specifics of peatland necessarily, but how we implemented it and what we did well and what we could do better. And I see Kim's here, which is really exciting. She was our peatland fearless leader, and she's going to lead this conversation.
Thanks, Satchel, and everybody for being here. Yeah, so having had done the peatland project as the first Homeworm Drawdown project, I think there were a lot of times along the way where we were asking, are we doing the right thing here? Are we going about this correctly? At the end, I think it was a hugely successful project. So I'd like to think that, yeah, what we did worked. It was a way, but it's definitely worth kind of taking some time to reflect on that process before moving into the next one. So I just jotted down some notes here, and I think afterwards, if people feel like I've left something out, feel free to jump in. But I think that one cool thing about the peatland project was it really showed that there are climate solutions everywhere, like in unlikely places. And I think we showed that to ourselves as well as the broader community, picking a landscape centered project. And our community had what it took to like pull off something really novel and somewhat kind of cutting edge in terms of climate strategy. And peatland protection has grown hugely in awareness over that time period, which is exciting to feel like we're like riding this wave. I think we learned that our community has a lot of engaged participants and talent and partner organizations, and a large pool of eager and enthusiastic volunteers. We were able to do a project that was very interdisciplinary, and it played to a lot of interests and allowed for, I think, a lot of personal agency within the project, depending on what people were really interested in. I think probably the biggest challenge of the peatland project that was kind of unexpected or unforeseen was how to move from the selection phase to the implementation phase, that transition period. For a couple months, it felt like we were on pretty shaky ground, and it was a bit confusing. So maybe something that could help us in the future is to come up with more cohesive ideas that are proposed, so that we're really voting on like a preconceived project rather than a theme or an idea. And let's see. So a lot of the peatland project did create a lot of public awareness and outreach. So it did that effectively. And something that might be worth considering is creating a very well-identified objective for completion of a project, rather than the idea that we'll just do as much as possible in this one arena. And part of that may be also figuring how can we actually quantify the carbon that this project is drawing down, sequestering, or keeping out of the atmosphere. The science hasn't been quite up to that for our peatland project, but the more we learn about it, the more we learn how effective peatland protection is, which is also exciting. But it was kind of a leap of faith in a way. I think something that would be good to consider is what it means to be a champion of a project, or somebody who pitches an idea, because that was, we chose people to research topics and bring them to the table to be voted on. And it ended up being that I did that and ended up being a leader, which was totally fine, but I didn't quite realize that's what I was signing up for. And COVID adaptability for the peatland project was really great. And that I don't know what that means for the future and how much we want that to be a consideration. But I think that was a huge win for this project. It might be worth considering also that the peatland project received a lot of outside funding and outside matches and partnerships from external sources. And I see that as, in a way, fantastic, because it engaged a lot of other people and it allowed for us to accomplish a lot more. But I wonder if it's not worth considering how much of that is going to be contingent on, the project actually following through. Ripple effects of the project. So how after 1 year passes, what is the long lasting effect in our community that doesn't have to be managed within this group, and maybe taking a moment to consider, is this going to be the beginning of something that can carry on independently? And yeah, I just, maybe if there's specific roles that those get designated. I know we wanted a note taker all along and didn't have one. So I don't know. That was like a long rambling list. And if I left something out that somebody feels is important, please feel free to jump in. Thank you.
Is it worth mentioning real quick, Kim, like what is going to continue going on with the Peatland project, regardless of the new Homer Drawdown project?
I could maybe just briefly, I believe we're going to be continuing to do this community science effort in perpetuity, hopefully. Oh, someone's going to have to help me. Oh, there we
Kim,
are.
do you want me to jump in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Penny.
Am I there? Can you see me?
You're here. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we're really excited about continuing this because we, like Kim said, so much momentum got built, and we are just excited to be capitalizing it. So we are planning to continue with the community science part. So people going out and taking depths of peat. We want to work with the research reserve and the city of Homer to make sure that the places that we're doing that are going to be helpful to assessing the total carbon that's there, and also assessing the water that's held in there for flood prevention, etc. And then the coastal studies is kind of taking on the banner of the youth education stuff, and they are now integrating peat into their regular everyday bread and butter for education, which is really awesome, because peat is so exciting, and now it's like integrated into their youth education stuff, and they're going to be putting together curricula for schools and stuff so that teachers from different schools can take their own kids out on peat excursions and learn about the carbon that's in them and all the biodiversity, etc. And then we are working on a mural project for the Homer Airport Terminal. So stay tuned. There could potentially, probably will be, there will be a super duper awesome peatland mural at the airport terminal entrance. That's really exciting. And then last but not least, we are forging ahead with our conservation efforts. So really focusing on working with the city of Homer, which has put together a really cool portfolio and plan for green infrastructure. And peat is an obvious choice for green infrastructure, because it might not always be green, but sometimes it's red, but still it holds a ton of water and cleans water, and it just sits there, and all we have to do is not mess it up. So that's what's happening going forward.
Thanks, Penny.
Can I just jump in too and just add that, oh, hi. Sorry, that there were also really amazing ripple effects of this project that are being undertaken by the scientific community and the Ketchimak Bay Research Reserve, including doing a lot of ground penetrating radar to figure out how deep peatlands are, using our data as baseline. So I feel like this community effort really also launched a deeper scientific investigation, which is cool.
Rika?
Well, I just want to expand on the ripple effects, and what we're doing also in the future is, well, number one, I just want to say it was really cool that we have established a relationship with the city on two levels, with the art mural at the airport, because Jan Kaiser is really facilitating that, helping us move through all those steps, and also with green infrastructure. It's just incredible. So this tight relationship. So a third one that the city is going to participate in is next spring with other decision makers up the road in Kenai and Soldotna, and just reaching out and with the borough assembly. And I think Jan is going to participate in that as well. So I don't think peatlands is going to go away. And what I see with these projects is that they spin and have this incredible energy, and then it spins off and it becomes its own project taken up by people, has a life of its own. So sometimes I get discouraged about thinking, what can we do in 1 year? If we limit ourselves, then we can't have that momentum to think big and send that project on to other people too. Just a pitch for that. Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Rika. Dale, did you want to contribute?
Yeah, one quick little lesson that to me was apparent, like the peatland project was kind of a summer centric project. And so I think that a lot of people are really busy in the summer, but we did a lot of the planning in kind of the winter. And maybe some of us, including myself, overestimated the amount of time or capacity we'd have to contribute when things got rolling. So that would just be something to consider with the type of project.
Right. Well, if nobody has any other like quick snippets, lessons learned, things we want to carry or not carry into the next project, I want to pass the mic to my coworker, Caitlin, who with a lovely team of volunteers in the Central Peninsula has spearheaded the Central Peninsula Drawdown chapter. And the Drawdown chapter up there has done a couple solutions, one of them being community compost, which is one of the solutions we'll be talking about today. So I wanted to make sure Caitlin could share their experience of working on a compost project together. And Caitlin, I'm going to pin you so folks see you, and I'll let you take it away.
Hey everyone, thanks Satchel. We're certainly excited by everything that the Homeworm group has done, and there's lots of talk about peat up here as well. So good ideas spread fast, and we're also just excited to have partner in crime, the Central Peninsula and the Southern Peninsula both coming together in their respective communities to do local climate solutions that resonate and fit well with their areas. I think it's like really mutually beneficial. So we're excited to see what you do, how this process goes, because we're about to kick off our own process up in the Central Peninsula next Thursday. So if you can't get enough kickoffs, we're going to do one next Thursday at 6 on Zoom as well. But then we're going to hope to move to a COVID-friendly in-person meeting, limited at the library. So we'll see, fingers crossed, if that's possible. But I just wanted to give a quick pitch in general for having clear metrics is what really benefited us. Having a really specific goal that we were going for, like we wanted to divert 50,000 pounds of food waste from the landfill in 1 year. And that was, certainly we hoped our community compost project would do more, maybe, but just having that really, really specific goal helped to unify our project and be something that was something that we could actually do. And so that was what we picked first in 2019, actually. So 3 years ago. Is that 3 years ago? No, 2 years ago. Anyways, and then the second solution that we did was the Solarize the Kenai. Both of those got bigger than intended, but for our next solution, we're looking at methane capture, retreeing, reforestation effort, and a community energized, weatherized project. So there's just so many good ideas. That's my bigger pitch for drawdown solutions in general. But in terms of the success of the compost project and kind of what we learned up here, yeah, we started in a pandemic, but we had so many people in the community who were excited about composting. And certainly it's not a new idea, but we had never really had community scale success. And so it's something that everyone could get involved in. We ended up setting up a drop-off site at our community action studio in Soldotna. And we have a couple of volunteers online here from Soldotna who started feeding chickens, and now we feed piglets. Basically, we've connected with a local farm so that we can feed chickens, not landfills, or as the case may be, piglets currently because there's no chickens. But it grew into a really a great solution that fit with what our community needed. And we actually extended the solution because of the pandemic to be 2 years long. And I think, you know, that felt authentic. It was a pandemic. We gave ourselves some grace. And honestly, that's kind of what we said at the beginning. It's like, we want to do a solution that community can do together, that we can get done in a year or two. So I think giving yourselves that grace is fine. And then the other lessons learned, I think having some seed money, which potentially we can pull together some organizations to just get started, super helpful. And I know Peatlands was really great at doing that. But I think like the umbrella of Inlet Keeper and Kachemak Bay Conservation Society is really helpful to just kind of get things going and, you know, host educational seminars. We did a ton of outreach in the community. And then ultimately we got about 200 folks to participate and bring compost either to the farm or to us. And then we coordinated folks to deliver the compost. And then we've had some days where we dig in the dirt and learn about compost. And then ultimately, as we saw our pilot project sort of coming to a close, I think what really helped us to like put a bow on it and gift it forward was putting in for a USDA grant that brought $120,000 into our community to carry the compost project forward and hopefully turn it into a viable non or for-profit business. But that was a lot of working like we always do, you know, all of us with city leaders, borough staff to do a to submit a grant that would kind of help grow the project and carry it forward. So we're super happy with how it turned out. We know it's going to get even better now that it's not in our house anymore. We've passed it forward. We're still doing a lot of coordinating of the grant and making sure everything goes smoothly. We still have a drop-off site at the studio. But overall, you know, I think as a community, we've learned so much. People are talking about it so much more. And it was truly a solution that everyone could participate in. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer, but I do want to leave time for everything else.
Awesome.
Thanks to Angie and Sarah Ann and Stephen for feeding the piglets currently.
Thanks, Caitlin. Does anyone want to ask any quick questions? The Soldotna Drawdown crew? Jean, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. It's my understanding that the Compost Project and the Solar's Kenai also have kind of a program that can be passed on to other communities. Is it no? I mean, not a program, but kind of a way to do it, or is it just the drawdown scenario that's a program?
Yeah, we've got an action kit for our drawdown process that we hope everybody in Alaska, every community in Alaska can do it. But I will say I'm happy to share. That's one of the things that we actually, this grant that we got, I'll send you that because that is really meant to, it talks about our process now and what we hope to do. And it's a grant that like is replicable. It's through NRCS and the USDA. And so if Homer wants to do the same thing, like they can submit the same grant. And I mean, I think it's like sharing is how we all like elevate each other's communities.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think, I will just add that all these solutions are connected. I was talking the other day with a representative on the staff at HEA who, because of all the talk about compost in the community, he is a very conservative fellow who was excited about compost happen at the landfill so that we could capture methane via the composting. And so it's all connected. And I do think that having a concerted community effort address and bring a lot of attention to one solution kind of doesn't matter what it is, because it gets the conversation going about how can we do more good things in our community that make life better for residents, steward the environment, and also, hey, they address climate change meaningfully.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I guess we'll roll into, so now we have 3 solutions that we're gonna spend just maybe 7 minutes or so on each one, sort of reviewing them.
Okay.
And then we will end up moving into breakout groups where you can pick which breakout group you go into and ask a lot of questions and dig down into each of these solutions, and we'll go from there. So I am starting off with composting, and it was awesome that Caitlin was able to give a bit of an update. I have a lot of questions, but they're a little more in depth, so we'll save those for the breakout group. Hopefully you'll be in there. Anyway, composting is in the book. It's number 60 as far as the rating of the solution from 1 to 100, but it is a very relevant solution and an important one to me, and I've been involved in it for a long time. And so I kind of favor it, but it has its challenges for sure. And actually, I want to give Henry from Alaska Coastal Studies a little bit, they're working on a grant to fund a composting project, and I believe he's going to go into the breakout group as well. But Henry, would you please just give a brief update on that, like just like a half a minute or something, and then cover more?
We're working on a Noaa grant. This is actually it's going to be under a marine debris prevention grant. So like a lot of the other projects, there's multiple benefits of doing the composting. So we submitted an LOI and now are ready to submit a full grant, and so we're looking at the process and getting all of our resources and evidence in order to submit this grant, with the goal essentially of creating like a commercial level community compost under a similar system to what was tried here a few years ago, and a goal of being able to compost, and this is where the marine debris part comes in, to be able to compost CPLA or PLA type plastics that are currently landfill bound. So we want that to be a solution. This is coupled with compost education, as well as working with Philippe, and I might not pronounce this correctly, but Amsterdamski, UAA professor, who's working on essentially a mycorrhizal or a alternative to styrofoam for packaging of things like shellfish or fish. And so we're trying to couple these two things together, essentially composting and compostables, to get it going down here in Homer.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to talking more about that and following up with it in the breakout room as a supplier of CPLA plastics that not intentionally, but probably end up on the beach. So yes. Anyway, so for the review of how we presented compost last time, Katie Rice did such a marvelous job with her presentation. What we're going to do is roll that, and it's about 5 minutes long. So Satchel, if you would share your screen, and we'll go to that.
Yeah,
Thanks, Katie.
Excited to share this with you. For folks that weren't part of our solution selection process last year or so ago, I am a little worried about internet bandwidth. So if folks turn their video off, that might help this roll smoothly. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I didn't follow up with the Zoom protocol. I need to share the audio as well. One more try.
Compost.
Great. So I'm going to be talking about a possible community composting project. Next slide, please, Satchel. So there's a lot of great benefits and opportunities from community composting. One is that keeping food waste and yard waste out of the landfill reduces methane emissions, which has about 30 times the warming effect of carbon dioxide. Composting also extends the life of the landfill by keeping organic materials out of it. Another great benefit is that compost is a needed soil amendment for local sustainable agriculture. Currently, there's multiple farms in Homer that are hauling in compost from the valley. Compost also has the potential to educate and engage a wide range of people in our community. We all eat, we all produce waste, and many of us garden, no matter what our age or politics or culture is. And on the most recent Drawdown review list of solutions, compost ranked 57 or 62, depending on the scenario. Next screen, please. So here's a quick overview of a few common types of composting to give you some context for the next few slides. Keep in mind that the scale, effort, the required equipment, and the ability to compost different sources of organic material like food waste, yard waste, compostable containers, meat waste, fish waste, and so on. Those all vary depending on your composting method. But all of these methods sequester carbon, they keep organic waste out of the landfill, and they all produce a valuable soil amendment. Next slide, please. So you might be wondering what other Alaskan communities are doing. We have some amazing people and organizations working on composting in this state, despite the difficulties that come with the territory here. In Anchorage, the city's solid waste service partners with a private company to compost food and yard waste in windrows. The city pays for this with landfill user fees. And just for context, for a large city like Anchorage, it costs them about $30,000 to $50,000 a year to do that. In Southeast, there's two small businesses that have different models. In Haines, they offer free drop-off for food waste, and then the company sells the resulting compost. In Juneau, there's a company that offers a paid subscription service for pickup or drop-off of food and yard waste, and then they sell the compost. In Soldotna, the Drawdown group there decided on compost as their project, and they partnered with a local peony farm. Participants drop off food waste that's composted in windrows during the summer. Then the food waste is used as chicken feed during the winter, and eventually the chicken manure will get composted too. I also wanted to mention Susitna Organics in Wasilla because that's where a lot of farmers in Homer get their compost. They primarily compost horse manure, so it's a different model than food waste, but it's another successful business model to look at. Next slide, please. So what about the history of composting in Homer? So there's a lot of groundwork already laid here, but also some challenges that have come up. In 2013, the Borough commissioned a feasibility study that recommended a pilot project in Homer using containerized aerated static pile composting, which is a pretty large scale, $1.25 million kind of project. In 2016, which obviously didn't happen. In 2016, the borough's solid waste department tried to pilot a project at the transfer site in Homer, but that ran into some problems and didn't move forward. Then in 2017, the Kachemak Advocates of Recycling partnered with the borough to start a project in Kachemak City using food waste from local businesses, but that ran into some logistical hurdles as well. And more recently, Matt James from Alaska Smart Soil has started composting horse manure, and last year he produced 25 cubic yards of compost, and he's hoping to be able to scale up to be able to supply compost to local farms. He isn't currently incorporating food waste, but if this project were to move forward, he's super knowledgeable and about composting here in Homer, and he would be a great resource. Next slide, please. So obviously there's a lot of potential for composting here in Homer, but there's some significant challenges too. Some of the barriers depend on the method and the scale of the composting project. But the biggest challenges that are common to each method are land, labor, and winter. You need land to compost, and land in Homer is expensive. You also need a lot of manual labor, and it keeps going. You need humans to manage the delivery of their organic materials, to mix the compost, to turn it, to sift it. Even if you used a mechanized system like heavy equipment, machines are expensive, they need maintenance, and they need someone running them. So this project would need a fairly large pool of reliable volunteers over a long period of time. Finally, we have to consider winter in Alaska. There's ways of keeping compost working all winter, but it can be challenging, and food waste doesn't just stop accumulating when you get a frost. So these are all areas that we would want to consider before moving forward with the composting program here. That's my quick and dirty intro to composting at Homeworm.
All right. Dale, do you have any? Well, I'm sorry, start my video.
I think we can probably save the rest for the breakout group. So we stick to our time schedule. So we just pass the baton to Bjorn.
I will say
Hi.
that composting is easier in the winter. Just to throw it in.
Hi, everybody. I'm here with my little niece. She's going to help lead my brief little discussion about heat pumps. So our champion last year was Scott Waterman, and I see that he's on the call here with us, which is great. Hopefully he'll join the breakout room and go into more detail. But you know, real quick background, I bet you all are kind of vaguely aware of at least what heat pumps are. And when we're talking about how our group would inroad with it, we would be talking about air source heat pumps for most likely, you know, residential contexts. But the big idea, you know, that Scott proposed last year when we were talking about, you know, which project we were going to choose on, was essentially following in the footsteps of the Solarized projects, which is, you know, group buy-in to reduce costs, to make them more affordable for a bigger pool of people. But I think the thing that we're kind of uniquely positioned to do, kind of beyond any amount of install or, you know, getting them in, you know, physically doing the work of getting them into people's homes or businesses, is to create this kind of groundswell of information. And in the chat, I'm going to put an article as an analysis that Aaron McKittrick did a couple of years ago about the carbon footprint of home heating on the Kenai Peninsula specifically, but it probably, you know, applies more generally to a lot of areas in Alaska. And when we look at, you know, carbon emissions, air source heat pumps, especially when the power is coming from renewable sources, are the most climate conscious ways to be heating our homes. And we now have a pretty awesome, you know, board. I'm sure that some would agree that it could maybe be a little bit better, but the HEA board is kind of moving in, you know, pretty neat directions. And they've got a, you know, 50% renewable goal by 2025. And it seems like they have a lot of, you know, momentum behind them to get that, to get to that. So part of, you know, so let's, you know, break this into a couple components. You know, we think about, you know, what could our project be? Think about how much work Cook and the Keeper in particular has done to kind of create the program of Solarize. So, you know, it wouldn't require a whole lot of, you know, redesigning or redeveloping the wheel. Kind of already have a lot of this, you know, know-how, you know, this great kind of mind trust working on these sorts of projects, very similar. And then, but then the other big part of it that is, I think, something that we saw in the Peatland project is that our group, Homer Drawdown, as this broader community group, has the great ability to create buzz. And, you know, for example, Seward has been installing a lot of air source heat pumps over the last couple of years, but I called Airs Plumbing and Heating today, and they're getting going, but it's not the buzz here yet, you know? So I think that that would be one of the things that were, you know, a niche that this, you know, if we chose heat pumps where we could really help fill this kind of this lack of education about this way to, you know, heat your home in a climate, you know, conscious way. And with that, I think I'll just pass it off to the next one, unless anybody has any questions for me at this point, but there are going to be breakout groups. And I think we've got some really great enlightened people on this topic that'll be in that breakout room. So the questions now or save them for the breakout?
And Jean is going to do our next solution. I did just, because I kind of rushed through the introduction, I didn't actually talk about the flow of today. So I want to make sure people understand that after we go through our last, revisit of our solution today, which will be non-motorized transportation, we are going to have a little more discussion and then a break. And then after you return, you can choose a breakout room that's either going to be non-motorized transportation, heat pumps, or compost, to go have a more in-depth community brainstorming about what a project would actually look like and what are the ways we could implement it here and some challenges and opportunities we might face. So that's what's coming ahead. But for now, I'll give it to Jean. Yep.
Okay, and I was just, I looked over Adele's presentation last year, and even though it didn't have specific projects, it was a good overview. And so the job in the Pratt, I mean, it did have specific projects, but also a good overview. So the job in our little breakout rooms will be more to focus on some specific projects. But let's get started with Adele on her last presentation. I know she's here tonight.
All right, I'm gonna do the same thing, share my screen, get the audio going. So.
Go next, and then we'll move to Penny after that.
Okay, thanks. The solution I'm championing is non-motorized transportation. So this started out as organizing for walking and bikeability improvements here in town. And those are kind of middle of the scale in the drawdown. You have walkable cities at 54 and bike infrastructure at 59. And then there's also kind of tie-ins to electric bikes. I just took an electric bike ride this morning. It was very, very fun. And there are also connections kind of with mass transit and ride sharing. You know, walking and biking are sort of the core of having a different transportation system that's not built around the car. And the other thing I'll mention a little bit is just afforestation. And that's basically, there's two ways that walking and biking improve or take carbon out. One is actually not burning gasoline in a car and just using, your own body to move around. And the other is not committing land to car infrastructure, parking lots, roads, driveways, garages, so on and so forth. So even here in this picture, all of that could have been forest, but it is 2 lanes and a lovely bike trail. What makes a place walkable and bikeable? This is kind of a very complex problem. It's 100 years of building for cars and all of the many, many decisions that we've made as a result of that kind of guiding principle. And it's not just building sidewalks, it's really about a culture of walking and biking. Trips need to be useful, safe, comfortable, interesting, and also normal. Sometimes when you go, like I grew up in Houston, Texas, you were a really weird person if you were caught on foot. Next slide, please. So I organized this presentation kind of on what this group would do. There's a lot of components to sort of changing the culture and infrastructure to make it a more walkable and bikeable community. One thing is finding data, how many cars do we have? How many people already walk now? There are a number of ways you can sort of look at these problems to assess and plan for change. They might be, this is the map that we use to extend the sidewalk from West Homer Elementary up to Soundview to kind of connect sidewalks. That's one way that people can get involved. There's a really interesting Walk Your City campaign that you put quick places and they print out these quick signs and it says 10 minutes from K-Bay to Two Sisters, that you help people really orient about and rethink about how to use their space. And then there's kind of individual projects. This is a picture here of the middle school where a sidewalk just abruptly ends and doesn't get to the front door of the middle school. Next slide, please. Other efforts are about education. This is the Homer Shares the Road campaign that the Homer Cycling Club championed a few years ago. It's actually, really talking, it's whether it's teaching people walking and biking skills or driver safety campaigns, and then communicating the real impact of cars. Education campaigns can look like walking maps, they can look like pamphlets, they can look like newsletters, they can look like social media campaigns. Next slide. And those kind of tie into encouragement efforts. Part of, if you go down to downtown Pioneer, there are sidewalks and there is a hefty shoulder and there isn't horrible traffic, but you still don't see people really there congregating and using the walking and biking infrastructure. In part, it's not really our culture, and in part, there's other things that are that prohibit, that make people not want to walk and bike. But you can chip away at that. You have encouragement programs. May is Bike Month, Bike to School weeks. You can make efforts towards kids, towards teenagers, towards seniors. We have a lot of kind of health activities here in town. Next slide, please. So those are ways that a lot of people could get involved in kind of small projects. And then you get to sort of some of when people think about improving the walking and biking infrastructure, they think building sidewalks, building trails, but that's really only a small part of it. We in Homer are really lucky. There's actually money already dedicated to walking and biking infrastructure through the Heart Fund. But what it really lacks is community push and effort. We have a really, I think, a city council and a lot of city staff that are amenable to these changes, but you have to have that kind of that community prioritization, that kind of overall organization. And so in addition to actually advocating for this sidewalk connection, that bike trail, this trail connection, there's also a lot of other things that people can do individually. Part of the reason that we don't walk in downtown Pioneer is that a lot of it is really unattractive. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't look interesting. There's not points of interest. There are no places to stop. So a lot of small scale projects are parklets, murals, gardens, benches, and then really key components. If you have a sidewalk that ends here and begins over there, connecting that, or finding where you have trail segments and then really working to connect those together. Because what you want is a connected system that lets people transport themselves without motor vehicles from as far away as people live to as far away as they want to get. Next slide,
Dale,
please.
could you try to finish in about a minute here? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go really fast. Policy changes are another thing to do. Parking minimums or rather than parking maximums, working with law enforcement. Next slide, please. Codes, zonings. What can we do in a year? There's a lot of things. There are a lot of little pieces to chip away at that. There's a sidewalk to the senior center would be a really easy win. A striping plan, renewed bike to school and bike to work efforts. We have a lot of infrastructure in terms of city and nonprofit groups here. And it's really just a question of which are the most achievable projects in 1 year and what can we do. One more slide. Other reasons to do it: economic benefits, environmental benefits, general health and safety, or mental and physical health for people, creating community and public space, and then just the equity of being able to walk outside rather than having to pay car insurance every year. And I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Adele. That's another exciting solution.
All right, that is another exciting solution. Jean, did you want to bookend that at all?
No, I think we can address anything in the breakout room. Thanks.
Great.
Oops. Oh, I'm not muted.
Well, yes, like I said, we're going to be going into breakout rooms. But first, we're going to just open it up for sort of like questions or thoughts that are bubbling to the top. And after hearing those or refreshing those solution ideas. I saw some cool commentary in the chat from Matt, who is our city park superintendent. Matt, do you want to talk about what you're doing at all?
Yes, I would. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm clicking on. There we go. Hey, so right now we're doing a lot of different stuff with trails right now in town, and reevaluating the way we approach them, develop them, and maintain them. And so the city does have a non-motorized transportation and trails plan, but it was written back in 2004, which in a lot of ways feels like 100 years ago. And so we've gone back and we're reevaluating that. It was done by Dow engineers, and it's a very comprehensive document. So I'm not going to rewrite it because I'm kind of busy. But what we're doing is an amendment, and it's going to be the 2022 update and supplemental, maintenance plan for the NMTTP. So we're looking at a couple of regions in town. I guess before spatial, functionally, what we're focusing on is connectivity and accessibility. So we want to connect point A to B to C to D to E in the most efficient ways possible and the most pleasant ways possible. And then we want those to be accessible for everybody to the greatest extent that we can. And we've identified a few primary regions of connectivity, and I'll throw them out real quick. One of them is the area off the end of Fairview Avenue. There's a development in process right now that Fairview Avenue will connect down to Eric Lane off of West Hill. And in the process, we want to make sure we've got sidewalks, other connectivity, and the Reber Trail comes down, ties into that. I've been working with or chatting with Bob Shavelson and Miranda Weiss. They have property right there, and they would like to develop a trail system on their property that they will make publicly accessible to connect everyone down to Soundview, which is exciting. The other region is the Quiet Creek area right above the high school. It's a good development, but it was not developed with any kind of pedestrian access in mind. It's white line to white line with steep shoulders down on both sides. And we're working on ways to connect that. And we've got a route, I think, identified to connect that subdivision with the high school through some existing trails. So again, that connectivity to make it easier to walk so that more people walk or take their bikes. The next region would be Beluga Slough. That area down there, it's a highly trafficked area, especially during birding season. And we would like to expand access to that. And not too long ago, a couple of years ago, Sue Mauger and Marianne Applin had submitted a proposal to the city for a Carmen Field Memorial Trail, which would be an extension of that elevated boardwalk that would go and wrap all the way around behind Public Works and connect to Lake Street, which provides connectivity, but also educational and recreational access, which is cool. And then the last region will be Town Center, which is, it's come up over and over again in developmental conversations over the years. And we just have identified it as it's an obstacle to get around unless you want to trudge through the woods, and it creates some traffic interruption patterns around town. And so we own land, Siri owns land, and there's a small strip of Bureau of Land Management, and we would like to get some relationships going with Siri so that we can develop maybe some maintained and accessible pedestrian access through that region. And other than that, I'm at the stage right now where I'm open to any kind of suggestions that folks have while we're talking about non-motorized transportation and trails. This does include sidewalks. We have the Main Street sidewalk project coming up, and a couple other ones on the 5-year road maintenance plan that Jan Kaiser, who just makes the world a better place, has kind of identified, and those are going to be in that plan too. So yeah, that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, Dale, I'm looking at you because, well, whatever, I'm kind of like talking in your role right now, if you want me to stop talking now. But so after the break, we have one more thing we're going to talk about, and folks can continue to throw in thoughts. But I'm going to send you all on a 5-minute break to move your body and take care of any of your needs, and then you can come back. But before doing that, what I would love is if each one of you, which is a lot of you, put in the chat your preferred breakout room. So by topic. So we're not doing randomized breakout rooms where you can go to whatever breakout room you want to dig into more, non-motorized transportation, compost, or heat pumps. And I'd like at this time for people to stop using the chat other than to tell me what breakout room they would like to be in, because you guys are very chatty and I love it, but it's going to confuse me. So yes, I'm seeing people throwing in their things now, and that's great. And I will start working on that. And Dale, no, Bjorn, do you want to talk about what makes a project doable and impactful?
Yeah, so this is a bit, one of the things I think that, Caitlin kind of touched on, is having some kind of clear objectives in mind, and, trying to kind of, keep in mind that as this weird little group that we are, we're non-government, and, almost everybody here is, volunteer. We want to really be cognizant of that. We want to not burn people out. We want to, have something that we can bite off, chew, digest, and then, move away from. And so that's, I think, a big thing to keep in mind. We didn't show the video that we showed pretty much every, when we were working on selecting the last project over those 9 months. Almost every meeting we would show the video of the guy talking about the level 3 action. Level 4 being, changing, government and policy, and level 1 being, individual choices that we make that, have an effect on the climate. And but where we're at is level 3, which is this community kind of project. And so what the value there, there's a lot of values to this level that we're trying to work at here is Homeworm Drawdown. And one of them is that it creates measurable, quantifiable, carbon reductions. That's kind of like why I think most of us are really all here, because we're very concerned about climate change. We want to try to see something, positive, see some positive change in the right direction on that regard. So that measurability, something that we can say, yes, we're doing good work on behalf of the climate. But then, the co-benefits of being, this level 3, and with a group here, what do we have on our call right now? It's like 49 at one point, or 43. There's 43 of us. And so when we go out and do whatever project we're going to do, that it has some kind of visibility, that it has, it's a conversation starter. It gets people thinking about, wait, why are these people taking it on to do this? So that I think is something that's important to it. And, so the Peatland project, I think, just showed just remarkable success in that way. It involved scientists and researchers and artists and, all, just such an array of people. So that's something I think we hope to really kind of keep in mind. And then also thinking about, like, are we filling a real need? Is this project, whatever it is, something that, doesn't exist, and that if it happens, it will be well received because it's needed. So I think there's one other thing I wanted to say on this. But anyway, I think those are, some of the kind of the points to keep in mind, measurable, attainable, and that it has this ability to create awareness as it happens and get people thinking about how do we as a society, lessen our impact on the climate. Is there anything else? Anybody have anything they want to add?
Nope, that was just some good context for sort of the scope of projects we're trying to think about. So it's 7:11 right now. I'd like everybody to take a break for 5 minutes. You guys can, let's give you 6 minutes. You guys can come back at 7:17. Yep. And I just discovered that since the last time we have done breakout rooms, and I've done breakout rooms, Zoom has implemented a let participants choose their breakout room feature. So I'm not going to be manually sorting all of you, which just is very exciting. And I'll make sure we're clear on how to do that when you guys are back.
I wanted to say one more thing, and I remembered what the last thing I wanted to include in there is that we try to keep in mind equity. You know, this is something that, you know, has been kind of, you know, baked in and is integral to this little group, is, you know, trying to find ways to, you know, to have equity baked into the project. And I think all of these here have the potential, all the three that we've heard from today. So, but there's just something else to keep in mind.
Thanks, Bjorn. And when you guys start trickling back, maybe just come off camera, let me know you're here, and I'll tell you guys what to do. Hi, Dale. Hi, Dale.
I just realized how big these breakout rooms are going to be.
It's okay. So when I open up the breakout rooms, you'll see compost, heat pumps, and non-motorized transport. I've never done this before, but I believe you can just click on which one you want to enter. We'll have a steering committee member in each one to help make sure the conversation is flowing. And really, we're asking you to discuss approaches we could take in implementing the solution. So getting more from the like category idea into the project level thinking, and then, you know, bringing up, thinking it through, bringing up what kind of barriers we might be facing if we choose this project, and what kind of opportunities or like good timing we should go for this one. Features might be associated with that particular project. And then, yeah, like Jean just mentioned, these breakout groups, because we decided to just do one for each solution, are going to be larger than what we did in our previous drawdown sessions. So just make sure you're paying attention to like who yourself, and if you're talking a lot, make sure you're creating space for other people to contribute ideas. And if you're not talking a lot, this is a friendly group and we all have the same goals. So we would so appreciate hearing your opinions. So we're gonna let you go for 20 minutes. I hope that was enough time to at least get some new ideas flowing, get folks started to think about this. This won't be the last time we think about these particular solutions. So, Jean, somewhere.
Yeah, right here. Let's see. We did not get time to even talk about champions, so just to let you know. So I'm gonna. We wanted to do this in about 15 minutes, and so each person should try to take 5 minutes to report on what ideas came up in their breakout room.
Oh.
If you came up with any potential champions, which are people who would want to make a presentation for a specific project. So let's just start in the order that we did our presentations, and the first one I think was the composting. So the breakout room spokesman for the composting, please.
Yeah, I said that I would be our spokesman. We did not settle or talk about champions either. I saw that there was already a presentation made, but we did not talk about any people necessarily being champions. What we actually spent a decent amount of our time talking about was different methods. And I mean, it seems like we got a wonderful resource in a project already going on in Central Peninsula, where they've kind of gone through some of the start of this and through to, like, I guess not a finish, but a culmination of their project up there. And so we talked about different ways that this can be done, a small about the benefits, but basically like what would this look like in our community? What would be the scale? What would be our system? What would be incentives for people? What would be incentives for a potential operator? We've also talked about some of the history of the composting here in Homer, how that was done or how it was proposed to be done, I think back in what it was 2017, and who were the players in that. And then towards the end, we got a little more information just on places to look from some of what was learned in the project in the Central Peninsula.
All right, and you've got a few more minutes, so anybody from that group that didn't hear something that they thought was important, raise your hand or unmute yourself. Okay, thank you, Henry.
Well, okay, Jean,
Dale, go.
just briefly, yeah, well, their project is, the application is due soon, and then we'll know if they get it maybe before our final April meeting, depending on the dates there. So we can follow up with that type of timing to know whether the Coastal Studies has that grant or not.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Anybody else from that group? All right, then we're going to move on to the non-motorized transportation, and Adele was going to present for that one, please.
Thanks, Jean. A lot of discussion about still sort of like some of the larger goals of what a connected non-motorized transportation system would look like. We talk about in-town trails, but there's also really like the walkability of getting up and down the hill, West Hill, East Hill. People mentioned we have these new developments and they're going in with things like cul-de-sacs. And even though there are requirements in code to have green space, those green spaces aren't necessarily required to be connected. And that's something, a city code change that could help have both connected green space, put the trails in those green spaces, and then also that would maybe have a benefit for being wildlife corridors. So that's kind of a policy update. We did talk just a little bit about sort of what is in the work. As Matt mentioned, the update to the non-motorized trail and transportation plan. He also, as a city, as the trail, I forget your exact title, Matt, but the person who's doing all that work on the city level has a small works trail management plan that has a certain amount of identifying of in-town trails, both city and not city. We talked about a lot of small projects like parklets that might help with sort of that feel of pioneer, that this group could have an impact on those city plan updates. And then different kinds of ideas like raised crosswalks, which would make crossing Pioneer safer. Share, as it was mentioned earlier in the chat, but that isn't actually allowed through state planning, expanding bike paths. So some of the challenges that sort of came up through the conversation were that many of our in-town trails are state roads. And so we won't be able to do those kinds of projects on those roads within this sort of year timeframe. And then the other challenge, it's sort of like it's impending, is that development is coming in, and when those developments come in without that connectivity or without those sidewalks already, then we have to retroactively put those things in, which is much harder and longer of a process. Other ideas, are really working at even the state level, like 3-foot passing rules or connecting ski trails. So still kind of a wide-ranging corridor. I would say that one of the biggest challenges of this particular solution is narrowing that project down to a scope that would be 1 year long.
Thanks, Adele. And I know that one of the things that we talked about, and we'll address it after everybody has their group, is the red flags. If you see something like Donna saw in our group that we couldn't do things on state roads, that would be a good time to bring that up to a group. Anybody from that group that wants to, that feels like we missed something? All right, so the ground heat, or the heat pump group, who's presenting for that?
Sure, I can speak to that. So we learned that we have a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about heat pumps, and many of them looking at trying to figure out how to get heat pumps installed themselves. We didn't select a champion at this point. So I think we're 3 for 3 on that. We had some good discussion about the role of the utility and kind of what all this means, and kind of in terms of price, in terms of renewables on at the utility level. And we talked about the importance of having, of something that would also help out people who, don't have the money. And I think, in my opinion, as much as anything, it's the time and kind of focus in order to try something that's as new to our culture here as heat pumps. And so how would we, make sure that those people, were included in whatever came out of this. And part of that is that there are some challenges as far as installers and people who know actually how to do the installation. Scott Waterman gave a little bit of an overview of what it would look. He was the one who was the advocate for this idea last time around, and he gave some overview of what a thermalized campaign, something kind of similar to, but not the same as solarized, that would be focused on installing heat pumps might look like. And we really kind of we left the conversation pretty much hanging. We were definitely wanting a bit more time, but yeah, anyone want to add anything that I missed there?
It's not something that we missed, but it's something that I meant to say in the little preamble part, was that the idea of creating this public awareness, if we do a thermalized program, would be to try to get some high visibility public space, to install one there as a part of the, awareness campaign, so people could really see one in action. And I think that would be a really neat part if we do decide to do a thermalized project.
In addition, I think, Bjorn, along with what you said, there needs to be a lot more education if we're going to get a lot of people interested in this particular component of really, reducing carbon.
All right. Anybody else from that group that wants to add to that? All right, and so just again to mention, if anybody saw something that kind of is a major thing to kind of steer clear of or anything, and those also will come up whenever. So
I can jump in, Jeannie.
yeah.
So we don't have too much time for discussion, but we did want to just kind of get a feel of what the room is feeling, because we're not voting like we would at a normal, or like we've done in our normal drawdown processes before. So we will have an opportunity to vote on these, but later on. And I think the steering committee has some work to do to kind of figure out what the best method will be to support solution champions and taking these like overarching theme ideas into project level proposals. So that we have some work to do, always open for suggestions, but we did just want to spend the next 5 minutes kind of hearing what's exciting you about these potential solutions. Like Jeannie was saying, what maybe makes you concerned about a solution or a particular method. And yeah, just kind of pros and cons that are coming to the top of your mind. I will say that it made me pretty excited to see that each breakout room pretty much had an even number of people, give or take one person. So sounds it'll be a tough choice again this year. But is there anything that's coming to the top of your mind for any of these solutions? Adele.
I just forgot to mention too that we started off our discussion with some other ideas too that were more about encouragement, like getting school-age kids or businesses, just having people learn to walk around their city. And then that we want sort of, another thing would be that we could have like almost like a community submission of trail inventory or proposals. And the city has a lot in town, but there are really wide-ranging possibilities beyond that.
I like the idea of taking inventory or a submission process to hear what people are really wanting the most of. Yeah, I think a lot of people would say a bike trail on Ketchumik Drive, but that might just be what I hear all the time.
Yeah, I had that conversation with the DOT planner, and the response was, does the city of Homer want to take on ownership of Ketchumik Drive? And the city of Homer does not want to take on ownership of Ketchumik Drive. Essentially, what she told us, she's a very wonderful person, very supportive, very good to talk to, but that somebody would have to die on Ketchumik Drive before they would before DOT would even entertain the idea of a bike path or a trail along.
So are we looking for volunteers here? Is that?
Can we fake it, Jeff?
I think Kim and I stand the highest likelihood of that.
Thing that came up in our group.
Rika too.
Thing that came up in our group, we had a lot of, we had city council, we had Park and Rec, and we had other city workers and stuff. And there are a lot of ways, if people are interested in this, that they can jump in right now, get a hold of Donna Adderholt or Matt Steffi, or probably, I'm thinking Deb or Adele. There's ways you can get, if you're excited about non-motorized transportation, you can get involved right now.
And a little plug, Home Recycling Club, I think, is looking for membership, and that's a great avenue for that effort as well.
I'm just gonna say that maybe it's possible. I'm not gonna I don't really want to keep pushing the bike trail on Kashmak Drive, even though I live like a mile past it, the end of it. But I will say that there were a lot of things that happened after the Homeworm Drawdown peatland project that I don't think anyone would have thought was possible before the Homeworm Drawdown peatland project. So I'm not going to say the person Donna's talking to is telling a lie or whatever, but if there's a whole bunch of people calling and asking and wanting a thing and pushing and saying, we want it, we want it, we want it, we want it, can change the dynamics.
And I would echo that, from the heat pump perspective, because it seems to me like we're facing, many hurdles. There's like lack of education and awareness about what they are. There's this, upfront, cost of installation. And then there's also, it sounds like a real vacuum in our area of real local expertise. But again, I feel like this is kind of like, would be such an awesome win, if this group kind of took that on to get over this hurdle and to kind of get us up, to kind of, what we were talking about in our meeting is how, this is in, Europe, this is what people are doing, even though, in places like Norway, gas prices are very cheap. This is what people are doing because they're climate conscious. And so, I think that if we took on a heat pump project, there would be a lot of hurdles. But what we saw with the peatland project is that that we have this this ability to create enormous groundswell, and that could be in any three of these that we talked about today. But I'm still thinking heat pumps.
Yeah, just thinking about some. Oops.
We can hear you, Ed.
Okay, good. Some specifics on the heat pump situation. We've kind of been focused on retrofitting existing houses, ours, but there's a lot of new construction going on in Homer, and some of it, are fairly small houses that I think probably would lend themselves to, fairly economical alternative energy type forms. So educating the builders, and that's part of this broader creating a buzz effect that Lauren was talking about. If we can get enough buzz going that that people buying new homes want this installed right off the bat, that would be a good place to go.
And I appreciate that, Ed. I have a son who's just bought property up here and will be building a place, and he is very interested in heat pumps. And he couldn't find anybody down here that had that level of knowledge. So we went to Anchorage, and luckily he's got a couple of people that are interested in working with him. But it would be neat if we had all that knowledge down here.
Well, where there's a market demand, people will come in. We've had solar installers coming from Anchorage,
yes,
as well. So, where there's a demand, people will
That's
come
correct.
to meet it.
There's not a lot of heat pump activity in Anchorage either. The economics of it don't work real well for Anchorage. It's more expensive, and if people are looking at it right now from a straight economic perspective, it's it's not all that feasible. There are quite a few that are being installed in Seward, and we may get some action from some of the installers there. Maybe our best bet.
Okay, another thing I wanted to mention, Blood, Sweat, and Food Farm already has a composting program underway, and we take our compost out there every week or 10 days. So, those are very enthusiastic, high energy people that, might be recruited as collaborators on a project like this. And my final thought was on the green spaces. I mean, I love to walk downtown. I'll walk down to the beach and back to my house and so forth. But it would be great if there were more small paths that connected the various cul-de-sacs and so forth, because really there's not too many places that you have the right of way to walk here. So I think that, politically speaking, it would be a good place to put some energy, maybe with the city council there, to open up some right of ways. If I can chime in, I would like to agree with pretty much everything everybody said. But I totally agree. Right now, as far as trails in the city, we have an amazing public works director. Matt's heard me sing her praise many times, but everybody loves Jan, and so it's a real treasure of a moment if we're going to make changes in town to work on them right now, because she could actually make it happen. I would actually have faith. I wouldn't have necessarily had faith in previous years, but that said, I also want to throw my 2 cents behind heat pumps. Bjorn pretty much summed it up what I was thinking. It's a very succinct project. As was very apparent in our group, nobody understands heat pumps. Like, everybody had questions and nobody had, like Aaron and Hig, of course, Aaron's got tons of answers, but we didn't have time to listen to all of Aaron's answers. But heat pumps have been around here for a long time. There's several people I know that have them in their houses and they all love them. And so back in the day when I thought Sustainable Homer should have a web page, there was information on heat pumps on there. And there's Ground Source. If you guys know Randy Arndt, he had a well driller specifically for building Ground Source heat pumps, and he bought it right when the city jumped on natural gas. So that is part of what collapsed that whole movement. It was really moving forward. Several people were starting to put them in, and then it just kind of collapsed. So I think a lot of education, in not just with the consumer side, but also with the training people who could fix air source heat pumps, install air source heat pumps. All of those kind of things are what will help your consumers be willing to invest in them. So getting all that information out for people would be a very concise project that you could finish in a year, and very well defined, and could be delegated amongst a lot of people. Could you research this? You research that? So as far as a project for Drawdown specifically, I also think that'd be a good one. And Blood, Sweat, and Foods, let's all send them our compost. Yeah, that too.
I want to be conscientious of people's time, and we're already 5 minutes over. So I wanted to give it to Bjorn to kind of reiterate some next steps for next meeting, and do any closeout things. If people want to stay on and keep talking, I'm loving the energy, and I don't want to stifle us, but I think that it's already 8:05. So let's kind of finish off the rest of the agenda and see if anyone's a interested straggler.
Awesome. Thank you, Satchel. So I'm gonna do this in reverse order in case people want to get off. The order I was going to do it in was to talk about other things climate related happening on the peninsula, but I'm going to switch it to giving the kind of like the homework assignment like we used to do. The one chapter that we didn't end up going through last time is in the book anyway, is called Coming Attractions. And I'm not as up to speed on the updates that have been happening on the Drawdown website, but I know that there are a lot of them. But if you want to be reined in with your homework assignment and you have the book, the Coming Attractions chapter of that book would be a fine place to start. So what we're hoping people do, if they have one project in particular that they're particularly excited about, that they would like to pitch to the group, you can start there, but sky's the limit. Of the 100 solutions in the Drawdown book and on the Drawdown website, if there's something there that you really think would fit with this, funny little capacity that we work in, and you want to propose it to us, we really want to hear it. And so that's the homework assignment. And then, the one, thinking about other climate, things that are going on, there's this new, new-ish, Renew the Kenai group. And does somebody, Hig or Satchel, have the dates? I want to make sure that people start showing up to those meetings and that they're being recorded, and they have, I think we're developing a YouTube channel of the past presentations. Is that right? I shared the one that Hig gave, but do you have the date, Satchel?
Well, there's a couple things you just mentioned. Penny.
Oh, sorry.
Talk about.
I followed where the wires got crossed.
Oh.
So I'll start. So there's two things happening. One is called Renew the Kenai, and one is called Repower the Kenai. They are intersecting. So the Renew the Kenai is an open group, just like this one. And anyone here is more than welcome to join the Google group. We meet on Mondays at noon. And we talk about all kinds of stuff about how to bring renewable energy on a larger scale to the Kenai Peninsula. And one of the brainchilds of this group is, I'm going to hand it over to Satchel, this Repower the Kenai project.
Great. So that's another event series, a little more presentation based, but there's always room for discussion at the end that we've been doing for the last 3 months now. And we're going through the different major renewable energy sources and really looking at what it would look like to bring them here in the HEA grid system. So we had a kickoff meeting where we talked about kind of the big picture, and then we did a solar specific meeting and then a wind specific meeting just recently last week. That conversation was awesome. Would really recommend checking out that video recording if you're interested in wind energy. And I believe next month is going to be a combination of talking about storage and hydropower. Cook and Keeper has those YouTube videos on the YouTube channel, Cook and Keeper's YouTube channel, so you could search in Keeper. I think Bjorn was opening it up for announcements of this sort. So if anyone else has announcements related to anything climate. I see Christy Bullock raising your hand.
Thank you. So those that don't know me, I was on as a subject matter expert for wildland fire back when the Peat project was first presented. Recently retired fire management officer from the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge. And as a retiree, finding myself with time and am a board member and a volunteer at the local Soldotna Buildup store. If you don't know what Buildup is, it's in your top 10, one of the ones that wasn't selected to go on, and that's Buildup. We recycle any kind of construction or home improvement materials, things that go into the landfill because they have no place else to go, because you can't donate them to Goodwill or other places. The store is extremely successful. This year, it's a nonprofit, and we have donated to the local homeless shelter, months worth of operating costs to them. So the store, as part of the success, we'd like to share that. And we're looking to Homer to expand, whether that's provide a blueprint for opening your own Buildup, or to
be a sister store, and we could be an umbrella over that under our nonprofit organization we have set up. We can provide a lot of startup costs, etc. So just looking for interest in that. And I knew about this group, and I know that's not the focus of the drawdown because this is a continuity, it's a volunteer thing. But if there is interest in that, I'm going to put my name and phone number and email in the chat, and please reach out. And we are just looking for how to reach out to Homer. And I thought this would be a good place to start, is the drawdown group, because you guys are active and care. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. And I want to reiterate that, so this upcoming meeting is the opportunity to pitch other drawdown ideas, and certainly any of the ideas that we eliminated could be pitched. And I think with the build up support, that makes that solution a lot more viable. So if anyone is really excited about building materials and the waste cycle, it does have a climate impact. We can justify that. It's in the book. So if anyone would like to pitch that at the next meeting, we can rediscuss it and vote on it in February.
Oh, and one more thing. So, you know, drawdown.org is the website, but does anybody need books? Can we help facilitate anybody? That's something that you can reach out to us to help anyone with, to get a copy of the book.
Where do we get a hold of the books?
I believe that Ketchikan Bay Conservation Society still has a few copies kicking around, and then maybe Cook and the Keeper as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we have two. So
you have two. Yep. And so
and
those.
if you want to go buy the Soldotna River City books, Peggy Mullen will sell them to you at cost for about $12. You can certainly buy them full price if you want to be nice to the local bookstore.
And we had a similar deal set up with the Homer bookstore here, but I'm not sure what their capacity or how many copies they currently have in stock. But that was the deal here as well.
Caitlin, I don't see your email or phone number in the chat yet.
Oh, I will add it.
Well, folks, I think unless folks have any other announcements, that's the end of our agenda. If folks are excited and would like to keep discussing, steering committee members can stay on a little bit longer. But yeah, we have so many good ideas, and this part of Drawdown is really energizing to get together and discuss these ideas, and it's really hard to narrow them down. And so I just appreciate everyone bringing their passion and energy here, and we're excited to meet again in February. Bjorn, did you have any other closing thoughts you wanted to share?
Nope, other than just thank you all for attending. Really excited and hope to, I'm excited to see what project we come up with.
Yeah, it was awesome to see over 40 people here. That's awesome. And I said awesome twice because it's awesome. What's the date in February, Satchel? Someone asked in the chat.
Oh, okay. I think we have decided February 16th, which is a Wednesday. We are switching up the days each month to try to, make it more easy for people who have certain commitments every month on particular days. So.
Also wanted to, Nicole was not here tonight, but I'm still trying to figure out there was a food preservation group meetup. Kyra, maybe you know what was going on there that would be good for homework for the next meeting, because that's one of the things that they were addressing. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Because I don't.
There's maybe Des knows a little bit. There's a lot of local food meetings happening this week. I'm not sure there's a specific food preservation focus, but
yeah.
Let me see if I can find that information really fast.
but everyone else can continue talking while I do this.
I guess if we're sort of done, I will just say that I would be potentially game to give the presentation for heat pumps. I'm not willing to lead the whole project, but
that's awesome, Hig. And I think one of the things that we also kind of failed to mention is that we've been talking about at the steering committee meetings of maybe having even it be a little bit more collaborative, like 2 or 3 or 4 people or whatever. But that would be awesome if you wanted to take the lead on it. And I would really gladly jump in with you.
That would be great. Yeah. Yep. I mean, and I'm also not wanting to take it away from, I don't know if Scott wants to do it again or whatever. That's awesome. I just, I like, as we were talking today, the ideas were starting to stir around. So I kind of have a presentation rattling around in my head now. So if that made sense, I think I'm game.
I think you have a up here in the Central Peninsula who would be excited to get on the heat pump train as well, especially for those of us who don't have access to natural gas in Clam Gulch, etc.
The Southern Kenai Peninsula Food Asset Mapping Workshop is Tuesday, the 27th from 10 to noon. If that's the one you're looking for.
I think that is related. Thanks, Scott.
Say that slower.
It's the Southern Kenai Peninsula Food System Asset Mapping Workshop, Tuesday, the 27th from 10 to noon.
And Scott, when is the next Resilience and Security Commission meeting or working group?
I believe it's February
the 9th.
9th.
Yeah,
February.
6 p.m. on the 9th.
Yeah, is the next full commission meeting. There is an opening for the seat in the Central Peninsula. So if anybody in the Central Peninsula is interested in serving on the Resilience and Security Advisory Commission, the application period, I believe, is open still. So we could use one.
And for those of you that don't know, the Resilience and Security Commission is working on our waste stream on a borough level, energy efficiency on a borough level, and agriculture.
Agriculture and land use, correct.
Land use on
And
a borough.
we kind of have our fingers in the energy stuff just a little bit too. Broadly speaking, it's a situation, as I see it, it's a situation where you can volunteer, which there are a lot of those, right? But it gives you a little bit of leverage on kind of the borough level, administrative level. So it gives you, as a volunteer, some ways of having influence at that level. So I think it's a good thing to do.
And it's another great resource for potentially leveraging any borough level prongs of whatever project we
yeah, and you can totally jump in without being a commissioner, and just if you're just interested in something that we're doing, like, yeah, plenty of room.
Earthquake.
Yeah, I feel it here too. Ooh, a big one.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's coming from your direction. It hit us after we heard you say it hit before it hit us.
I think I saw Ed's screen shake.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So I always try to make my guess. I'm gonna say 5.5, and given I kind of have a sense of where Caitlin is, a 5.5 somewhere in the upper inlet.
It could be Zoom tricking you though, because Zoom, like coordinates people's voices in its own little, who knows what kind of algorithm.
I don't think it can travel into the future though. So I'm pretty sure, at least I hope not. That would be a whole new complication. Totally screw my schedule up.
Yeah, that's a new one. Is shared Zoom earthquake experience.
Right.
That was fun.
Hey, that'll be recorded. That'll be a really awesome part to share.
It is, yeah, we're still rolling.
Yeah, it's awesome if it's a 5.5, but
Too short a duration to be a really huge one. So that's the you know, duration's a pretty good way of guessing how big the actual earthquake was.
So I need to sign off. I've got to take Kim and Clay and the baby to the airport. But I'll, yeah, talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Bjorn.
the timing worked out, Bjorn.
everyone.
See ya.
Thank
Thanks,
you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Same
Safe
here.
travels, Kim.
Good night, everybody. I'm taking off as well. Nice to see you all.
Good night.
Thanks for coming.
Okay. I think I've got the dishes to do. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night, Ed.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Night, Morgan.
All right. I don't like earthquakes anymore. I used to enjoy them. Now I just go, oh.
Yeah, got too
Rika,
many
you're
things on
muted.
shelves above me.
Good job, Team Homer.